This is the Get Savvy Show, brought to you by the Reluctant Leader Academy. I'm your host, Mark Terrell, and on each episode, I'm going to help you get savvy to allow you and your business to grow. We'll be focusing on the 3 elements that lead to business success: your mindset, your processes, and your skills. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Get Savvy Show by the Reluctant Leader Academy. I'm Mark Terrell, and today we're going to be talking about brand. I have Danny Matthews joining us to talk about the importance of brand, and also I think it's really relevant when we talk about leadership, understanding where the brand and where it fits in with the business, and where the vision and mission fit together with regards to brand. So really looking forward to this chat, and I think without further ado, we should bring Danny in to join us. Welcome, Danny.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to our chat. I know you're very passionate about what you do. Just tell us a little bit around, why do you think brand is so important before we sort of really dive into it in a while?
Yeah, your brand is really it's kind of the sail to your boat, right? You can, once it's in place, it guides you along the way. So whether you're hiring staff, or whether you need more customers or clients, or if you need to retain more staff or build a leadership team, whatever it might be, your brand, once it's in place, is a really important tool to act as a guide for whatever you do in the business going forward, including things like sales and marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of emotion attached to brand, isn't there, whether we realise it or not. If it's our own brand or the brands we buy, we're emotionally attached in some way, and that's why we're a customer of that brand, or why we're attached to the business or the brand that we've created.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, a fairly recent, I guess it's a recent concept, but it's something that I think we all understand, but we've never put a word to it or a definition to it in some way, and it's called semiotics, and it's actually how symbols and signs are ingrained in us from a young age, and how we see them in our adult lives. And I remember there's a really good book actually called Semiotics in Marketing, and it links with branding really well, because she tells this story about, if you were to ask someone what color is an apple, most people would say red. because from a young age we were told these stories about apples falling from trees and Little Red Riding Hood, and that she had these juicy red apples and that kind of thing. So we're yeah, it's a really interesting concept.
That's really interesting stuff. So yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into the brand topic. But first of all, with all my guests, I have a deep, well, not a deep dive, but a dive into why they do what they do. With that in mind, looking at motivations that drive us. And so you've completed a motivational map, Danny. And what came out of that was your top 3 motivators were: number 1, searcher, which was actually, the drive to make a difference, do something purposeful. With regards to doing something that's worthwhile, is in respect to what you think is worthwhile. Obviously, that's a personal thing, but obviously that links to brand. Secondly, spirit, so having control over your time and the autonomy to do the things you want to do in the way you want to do them. And thirdly, the creator, so bringing new ideas into being and having a big part in obviously solving problems as well is something that the creator tends to like to do. So the question is, how do you see these 3 motivations showing up in your business and what you do, Danny?
Wow. This is really interesting, actually, when I saw this come out as a result, because a lot of us go through, you know, if you've been through a branding exercise, you'll go through it usually with a lot of assumptions. And doing this actually, and even you just talking then, connects quite deeply emotionally with me, because this is literally you've just explained my business for me, basically. You know, we are. Even though we're really a creative studio, everything that we do goes towards advancing humanity through the creative process and creativity, and that really fits with the searcher. You know, I'm always looking for. It's really hard for me to create anything without any purpose or meaning. There's no, you know, gone are the days for me when someone would say, "Can you design me some social media templates or a logo or whatever?" without anything else, without any real purpose to it. You know, why do you want a logo? Why do you think you need a logo? Why do you want these social media templates? Nothing is ever as black and white as just I need something or I want something. There's always a purpose behind it. So I've always made it my job to dig a little bit deeper and find those stories and find those connections, because the end result, I know, is always going to be better for it. So yeah, really interesting how this connects to not only my business as a whole, but actually what we do for clients as well. So yeah, it's
I think it's worth mentioning that when I first met you, Danny, you weren't doing what you're doing now. You were doing something completely different.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the reason why you're doing what you're doing now is connected with those motivations. Would that be right? And would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I think really deeply about it, it's obviously connected with. You know, the purpose as a business is so closely connected with my purpose as a human and as a person, and through my story. You know, when we first met, I was a mortgage advisor. I was in financial services for over 10 years. Ran a really decent, successful business in financial services as a mortgage and protection broker. But I always wanted to be a designer as a kid, and that's where this kind of skill came from. But I never really had the other piece of the puzzle, which was the valuable part, the experience, the commerciality, the you know, how to have conversations, how to connect with people, how to find meaning in things. I just never connected the two, so I always just wanted to be a designer. And it was only through going through the process of building a business and doing all the things you need to do, like sales and marketing and finding leads and buying leads and generating income, that I really got the experience I needed, I think, to make design more purposeful in the way that we do things. So yeah, it all comes from that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because obviously, I'm sure some people probably questioned you when you were making that big move. You think, well, you've got a business, it's successful. Why would you want to go and change things? But it's amazing how, whether we put it down to motivation or not, how our motivations do drive our behaviours and the actions that we take. And also, if those motivations aren't being met, ultimately deep down we feel it, and we probably can't describe it. maybe we can do now using sort of motivational maps. But once you can describe it, you can then have a bit more understanding of what actually is driving it. What is that core within you that actually needs to be fulfilled, and as maybe isn't being fulfilled in our current role or current business.
I think,
Right.
Just a quick one on that. I think that we've probably all got this thing that we either want to do or feel the need to do, or I think they call it a vocation, like what we're meant to do. I think we all have that. We're on this journey to try and find it. And, I'm really grateful and really lucky to have found it, I think, pretty early on, but it wasn't easy to find it. And it wasn't a nice process to go through. I know it sounds like, oh, I found my thing, and it all sounds very nice. But, when you're being dragged off the floor in London because you've lost feeling from the waist down, isn't very nice.
No, I'm sure it isn't.
So I do, I guess, regularly now, after telling the story a few times, but I now regularly say to people, I constantly live in this paradox of like not wanting anyone to go through what I did, and yet knowing that it's the thing that got me to where I am now. So that's a really difficult thing when you really love what you do. Yeah.
It's interesting. I heard someone talking on a podcast, and they were asked a question about what you would change from, you had the opportunity to go back to tell your young sort of teenage self what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And actually the answer was I would tell them to do exactly what I've just done, because I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't done all the things that I'd done, made all the mistakes I made, and all those mistakes have led me to where I am today. And if I hadn't had those mistakes or learned those lessons, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I think that's quite a valid way to look at it as well. Yeah. Right, let's get into the topic then, Danny, with regards to brand. I want to first of all talk about your concept of brand confidence and where that's come from.
Yeah, so this is a funny one. It's I didn't really plan for the business to turn out the way it is, but it was possibly just over a year ago, possibly 18 months. I'd been working with a few clients around logos and elements of branding, trying to help people with putting together mood boards and colors and objects depending on what their business was. And a common theme would be that I'd get a message on Facebook or LinkedIn or somewhere, or I'd get a phone call and someone would say, I'm just wondering how much a logo is. And every time someone would ask, I would be stuck. Like, I don't know. It depends. And I guess that's kind of the answer to most questions we get, isn't it? It depends on what goes into it, what the output is. And I never really had a real feel for what people were trying to do. So I changed the way that I dealt with these inquiries and started asking more questions, and sometimes questions that people kind of frowned at me and said, I don't know what you're talking about. And most of the time it was just why. Someone would say, how much is a logo? And I'd ask, well, what's the problem? And they were a little bit confused to begin with until we started digging. And by the end of the conversation, almost every single time, the problem we were trying to solve was something around confidence. It was that the staff didn't have confidence, maybe because they struggled to communicate in a certain way, or the leaders were frustrated because the team didn't know the conversation that needed to happen or the message that needed to get across, or it was the fact that the leaders weren't confident because they might not have been through a process of figuring out what the company actually needs to do in the world, or what the purpose, vision, or mission was, and all these different elements of branding. And it was a little bit like a lightning bolt, I guess. Just one day I said, every single person I seem to speak to, their only goal is confidence. And so I started to decipher what parts of branding that fit with, and lo and behold, it's every part. Everyone wants to be confident. Everyone wants a confident leader. Every team wants to be led by someone confident. Every client wants a confident person to deal with, whether they're on the phone in customer service, a salesperson, a team manager. Every single person needs that confidence, and the way that they get the confidence is through the brand, it's through the message, it's through the strategy, it's through the behaviors and the things they do on a day-to-day basis that build that confidence. So I started to put things in place to really I guess formulate that, so the income was very consistent, the input was consistent and the output was really predictable, and decided to create a business and a product around brand confidence, which is now a trademark, so leave it alone.
That makes so much sense. I mean, it does make sense, because that's the whole point of having a brand. You've got to, not only is it for you, you create it for your team, and you also create it for your potential customers, and that has to, resonate, and the confidence thing comes from that, and I absolutely get it. I've been through, my first business, which is now still my business, First Class Coaching Solutions, still exists, but the brand I use now, the Reluctant Leader Academy and the Reluctant Leader sort of logo thing, it's far more around, my journey, about, connecting with people in that position. It's not just about teaching people leadership skills. It's about understanding where they are and empathizing with them, understanding that, they might not have got to that point because they wanted to be, actually, but there is the whole point is giving them hope that there's and a way out of this situation that they found themselves in, which is the position where I found myself. So absolutely get that, Danny, and I think it's brilliant. And with regards to leadership, it makes things so much easier with regards to setting that vision. And you've already alluded to it. The vision part of any business is so important, and I've been on your website and you talk about that vision mission part. So let's talk a little bit about that and how that fits in with the brand confidence concept.
Yeah. It's probably a really important thing to say that branding itself as a exercise, as a process, it starts with us as leaders, but it's actually not about us. It's all about everyone else. It's all about the team. It's all about the clients. And that's a really hard thing to get past in the beginning. But a really important part of branding, and something that I always take clients through right from the very beginning before we do anything, is something called set intent, which is all about what is your intention for the business, what is the vision for where you want it to be, and be really clear on what that is. In the short term and long term, because we find ourselves in situations sometimes, a little bit like now with pandemics and economies and things like that, where it's really hard to build momentum and really hard to get people to follow you on this path towards whatever the vision becomes. It's a really hard thing to build that momentum, and vision is such an amazing tool to give you focus and to bring that focus back in. So when everyone else is scrambling, all you need to do is re-look at the vision and just say, well, this is where we're going. Like it doesn't matter what else is happening on the outside world. We continue towards this because it's never about money, and it's never about, well, it might be vaguely around money, but it's never just about money. And it's always about something else outside of there. So having a really strong, compelling vision is not only good for you to keep you focused as a leader, but also for your teams and for the people around you to have confidence that you know where you're going and that they are safe, and that you can provide that structure and that work culture for them. That's really where it all leads.
Yeah, it makes total sense in that, with regards to leadership, you've got to hang your coat somewhere. And once you've set that intention, as long as you've got something that you can always point people to, and then it's not about you and them. So when there is something that's maybe not quite going well, you can just say that this is not going well because we've gone off track. We're not following our vision now. And then it makes it a lot easier to bring people back on track, rather than just having, a bit of a woolly sort of idea about the business, where that tends to lead to a point where you have a misunderstanding which comes in, and then it becomes a conflict between you and them, rather than, well, actually what's happening here is not in line with our vision, our mission and our values. And obviously I've mentioned values there. I mean, values are very important with regards to brand as well. I'm guessing. I'm not going to preempt up something, but
Yeah,
values fit
I
in there,
mean,
don't they?
yeah, but values is it's funny actually. I don't talk necessarily about values that much, and part of the reason is I think they're really I think people treat values within the branding process um, very differently to how I think they should. So, and there's a couple of different facets to this. Values is sometimes something which people go into a branding process. They come up with some words that they believe represent them and who they are. But the problem is no one can connect with them because they're about them. So what we tend to do is stop there instead of going to our clients or our teams or the other people in our organization or the people that interact with us on a daily basis and creating some kind of key phrase or some saying or some phrase that is quite natural in conversation or could be quite natural in conversation that you can say out loud. Um, so we kind of stop at this. They're my values, and this is what we work by. Now, values are an amazing thing as a decision making tool. You have a list of values, and you can say, I need to make a decision. Does it fit with these values? Do I work with this person? Do I hire this person? Do they believe in what I believe in? But people don't do that. It's kind of a set and forget. I kind of know who I am, and I'm happy with that, and then move on. But actually, that stops you from using it as a utility or a tool to do better business, really. So yeah, values are a strange old thing, and I don't talk about them much because there's a lot that goes into them, or a lot that should come out of them. But they seem to just be kind of a task within a process rather than a thing that you actually use.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when we talk about brand, you talked about a logo, but obviously a brand is more than just a logo. So what other elements should we be thinking about when it comes to a brand?
There's a lot that goes into brand, and honestly, I've spoken to and worked with many huge branding names, people from big global and UK agencies. And everyone, no matter who you speak to, gives the definition of branding a different definition. So I just don't try anymore. I don't try and define it. But what I do is I define it in the context of confidence. And to have brand confidence, you need a strategy. You need that intention as a leader. You need messaging. So you need to be able to formulate whatever you've come up with as a leader in your brand that resonates with the outside world, whether it's team or clients. And then you need behaviors. And behaviors is something which I think people probably miss a lot of the time. These are the actions that back up what you say. And it's the biggest difference in your reputation. So your reputation, as we know the saying, something like you takes a lifetime to build a reputation and a minute to destroy it. And mostly it's because our actions don't back up what we say. So the messaging and the behaviors don't align very well. But once you get them down and you can, what you say and what you do match, and then you can start to think about identity. So what you said there about branding is not just the logo. Actually, the logo most of the time is the first thing that people see, but it should be the last thing you do. And it's a little bit like the sail thing of the boat. You actually need to build the boat before you add the sail and before it can guide you. So yeah, branding is a hell of a lot more than just what people see from the outside world. And it's so important that you need to do the back work first before you start to do that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think, we're on social media here, streaming live. And one of the things that social media gives us is an opportunity to be very authentic, I suppose you could say, if that's a word that you like. Some people like it, some people don't. But actually, if we are being ourselves, then we are being authentic. But when we come to branding, we can be more niche, can't we? We can be more, bit more Marmite because we have this social media platform that we can really hone into the people that we really want to work with.
Yeah, it's a little bit like what. So I've thought about this before, not in great detail, but it reminds me of something like when we didn't have social media, and when we could only connect with the 73 people in our village, and we didn't have any way to communicate with the outside world, we were all very, I think this is where like village idiot phrase comes from, because if you were
Yeah.
different to the rest of the people, you were singled out. Like, you were the worst person ever. But now we have such communication where we can communicate with anyone on a global scale, anywhere in the world, about anything, and you'll always find other people that follow what you're talking about. We don't get we get two things. We don't get the singled out as a bad human thing that much, or hear me out. But on the other side, we're so connected that so many people have got so many opinions, and you either have to brave it and do it and just be bold and get it out there and be a little bit audacious, or you stick to your own networks and your own communities and that kind of thing, and you'll probably be viewed as a hero or whatever. So yeah, communications changed massively, but social media and that kind of thing gives us, no matter what anyone says, it gives us more opportunity and more optimism than it does pessimism, I think.
Yeah, I've got clients in Australia which I'd never have, when I set up my business, no way on earth I would have thought that would have happened. But it's how things are connected, and that wasn't something I planned. It just happened by accident because of them listening to a podcast, which then connected them to my website and all those sort of things. And then you realise actually it's like a web that you need to sort of have all different things out there doing stuff, different options to people to listen, watch, read, and that's the thing. It's communicating in different ways, which I guess comes again. Obviously, when it comes to brand, you want that to be consistent, don't you? Presumably, with regards to when they hear you, when they listen to you, those things are important. So what I'm getting to here is actually how you, when you are communicating in a written form, how do you make that sort of connect with maybe a video and an audio form? Is there a way you can do
that? From a branding point of view. So this is it's really down to the messaging element of your brand. So the different elements I mentioned, the strategy is really just about uncertainty. Is about battling that uncertainty and becoming a confident leader. That's really the strategy element. The messaging element is more about consistency. So the reason that a lot of what you see online and through some small businesses is really inconsistent is just because they've got an unreliable way of putting their message out there. There's no particular guidelines on how people should communicate. So, you can outsource your social media to a social media marketing agency, for example. They can learn a bit about your business, but without any strict guidelines of these are the phrases we say, these are the things we believe in. It's just unreliable as a method of communication. But if you have that, you can give it to anyone. You can give it to designers, advertisers, creative agencies, PR people, and they'll literally be able to create documents, press releases, social media posts, advertisements, whatever you need to do. Or you need creating, because there is that consistency in communication, and that way it doesn't matter who does it. It just matters that they follow those guidelines. It's a really nice little tool to scale those kind of guidelines. So if you're trying to create that consistency between video, written form, brochures and advertisements, whatever it might be, then that is the best way that you can do it.
Great stuff. So you mentioned leadership. And I know you've got big plans for your business going forward. Just tell us a little bit about where Danny & Co.'s heading.
So I'm really grateful for many things over the last year or so. But one of the big things was I had plans about just over a year ago. I kind of figured out that if I was going to run my dream business, this is what it would look like. And started to figure out the kind of roles and the kind of people that I would want in the business. And really something that fits within the company's purpose and my values and my vision for the company. And I figured out that a team of about 8 to 12 would be ideal. And to be honest, would pretty much allow us to do anything we wanted from a brand creation, design, content production point of view, which is what we really focus on. So, but unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and there was a bunch of changes I needed to make in a business, which, to be honest, was probably the best thing that could have happened. Just so I could start to understand how you scale a design business, essentially. I started off as a freelance graphic designer, and there's no way of scaling that because of the time constraint of me just doing jobs and doing marketing and doing all the things and wearing all the hats. So I had to start thinking a little bit bigger. Mm-hmm. Luckily, the government created the Kickstart scheme, which is a scheme to help young people at risk of long-term employment find work. So I put in an application through a gateway, because if you take under 30 people, because it's more geared for larger companies. So if you take less than 30 people, you have to go through a gateway. And I said, look, it was going to happen anyway, so I'll take my 8. I already knew who they were. I already had the job descriptions. I was ready to go. So I just said, yeah, here you go, all done. Just let me know how it gets on. And then we were approved just before the new year, or just before Christmas, which means that I'm in the process right now of recruiting 8 people to fill out the team. And that is going to allow us to really scale the program that we have, that we've built for brand confidence, but also start to maybe do things. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that it's partially funded, and that, I don't lose anything if we do some big projects for less than what we usually charge, because essentially for 6 months, we're on running costs, and we can scale much quicker if we, instead of inject profits back into the company, just utilize the people and the time that we have. So yeah, I've got pretty big plans for this year. It's not going to be easy. But I think over the last decade, I've built up some pretty strong beliefs about leadership and how businesses can be run remotely, I should add, because all of them are going to be remote workers, not just because of the pandemic, but because that's what I believe in. And I want to, my goal really for the Kickstarter scheme in itself is that when these 8 people get to the end of 6 months, the full intention is to take them on full time and keep them forever, or allow them to go onto something that they really want to do. But my intention for this Kickstarter scheme is, if these people end up leaving at the end of the 6 months and I can't keep them for whatever reason or whatever, every single job that they have will never be as good as this one. And that's kind of the goal. So I want to create this incredible atmosphere, even though it's remote. I believe it can be done. But it hasn't been tested, obviously. So I want to create this amazing culture, and really set the scene for what I want the company to be in the future. And if that doesn't happen, I want it to be remembered as that way anyway. That's Brilliant. Basically it.
And the question I was going to ask is, if you've written all these job descriptions, have you written one for yourself?
Good. That is no. That's a really good point. Something I haven't thought of. I'm going to do that.
I did that with a client not so long ago, because he went through a process of doing that, and I said, "Well, hang on a minute. Isn't the most important job description one you haven't mentioned yet?" And then the penny drops, and he said, "Yeah, absolutely, yeah, I do need to do that." Yeah. And it's really important. It's really important, and when you're doing that, but bear in mind those 3 motivations. How they're going to be met going forward, because obviously your role's going to change, isn't it? Obviously, from a small agency to one that's employing 8 people, there are big dynamic changes, and your role will definitely change with regards to leadership. And it comes, it's a great time to get that right and make sure that you stick to it like you would expect everybody else to stick to their job role. So anyway,
that's a good point.
So Danny, it's been a joy. Thank you for your time today. It's been really interesting. Brand is something that I think is really important, and on my own journey I've learned a lot about it, which I didn't know 2 or 3 years ago, which I wish I knew. So before you leave us, where can people find you?
You could just go to dannyand.co. I know that you completed the scorecard. There's a lovely scorecard. It's really a benchmark scorecard for the different areas of your brand that I mentioned. It's a great place to start for anyone, no matter if you're a corporate or a one-man band.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Danny. We'll catch up with you very soon, and for now, wish you a great day.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mark.
Well, I really enjoyed that. Hope that was worthwhile, and you got some worthwhile info from Danny around branding. Yes, I've done his scorecard. Highly recommend going to his website and doing that. Doesn't take long to do. I think I came out at 6.9, but the thing was that it highlighted where I'm weak and where I can obviously then focus, which was great. So highly recommend that. Check out Danny. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Get Savvy Show. And until the next episode, I bid you farewell and have a great day.